Welcome to the Event Debrief, the podcast where event professionals come together to unpack what really makes events work. Each episode breaks down expert-led debriefs, emerging tech, and industry insights to help you deliver more effortless events. So, let's jump in.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on the next episode of the Event Debrief. My name is Alex, your host for today. For today's topic, another really exciting one. So it's another episode of our AI and Events series. This one in particular is brought by the fact that after we interviewed 380 plus event planners around the world, I think it was 62% or more of them said that they have struggled with AI or using AI in events purely because they don't know how to adopt it. There's a skill and expertise gap of how they should implement it and how they can convey that to their leadership team and really have a framework to roll it out. So, which it's perfect segue that I'm very excited to have our guest on today, David Watt from CI Group. So he's got some awesome background and a terrific framework that he's helped many agencies and organizations adopt AI into their fold. So without further ado, I might let him do the honors because he can explain it better than I can. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Hi, thank you very much, and thanks for having us on today, Alex. It's great to meet you from the other side of the world today.
Also, I should say good morning to you and good evening for us. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. So, I guess maybe just to kick us off, could you maybe give us maybe a short intro, I guess, to yourself and the CI group and the work you guys do, I guess, in the AI and event space?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Obviously, we're in sunny Oxfordshire over here in the UK, and CI Group is actually part of a group of agencies. So, and we've got an events agency within that, Corporate Innovations, that's been established for actually over 30 years. So, our pedigree comes from events, and as a group, we've then bought more agencies over the years, and now we've got a fully integrated group of marketing agencies, events agencies, creative, data, and our latest actual build, rather than acquisition, was a new agency called I Am Sammy. So Sammy was founded in the last 12 months after 3 or 4 years actually of a AI journey we've been on. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about I Am Sammy today and let you know how the kind of AI world is going and how that's affecting the events industry.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Awesome. I was going to say that's probably a perfect segue to the next question. I guess the current state of AI right now in the event space, I guess from your perspective, and maybe two parts to this, why, in your opinion, do you think some of the organizations may be struggling to move beyond the experimental phase when it comes to AI? And I guess, has that played a part in why you created I Am Sammy as a part of your agency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll go back though to come forward if that's okay. I think when you start to look at, it's interesting the number of different applications that are available today. You know, I think there's something like 67,000 companies that are producing somewhat over 10,000 different types of applications in AI today. So it's a very confusing and a very, very busy market. And I think that the experimental thing really falls foul to people just jumping from app to product and not really actually settling down on what they feel is the right set of AI tools to help their particular business or their businesses, and then build proper business cases, or as we frame them, pilots that become good business cases to be able to then roll those out across their organization. So it's a fact at the minute that there's over 60% adoption across business now, or in some shape or form of AI, but really nearly 85% of all pilots fail because of what we call boiling the ocean today. And maybe we can have a conversation about how much data is being boiled into it and why those are failing a bit later. But so we've developed a framework to be able to actually distill down those number of apps that are on the marketplace, actually point you towards which companies that you might want to head towards, and also what frameworks that you might want to use, whether that be prompting, whether that will be roadmaps. And also then we've got some kind of like good some good help and some good thoughts around how you can then roll out a pilot and make it successful. So yeah, we can get into those in more detail as we go through.
Awesome. That'd be great. Also, do you mind if I just touch back? It was a really great point that you said about one of the main problems is people trying to boil the ocean, and I totally agree with that. Could you maybe, I mean, for people who aren't familiar with that, and I guess that context to AI, could you maybe explain a little bit more? What do you mean by are people trying to boil the ocean with AI?
Well, as listeners, please kind of reference that into Google or
Yeah.
any piece of AI. And there are lots of kind of thoughts. There are lots of thought leadership pieces out there that effectively, what people are doing is they're trying to make their projects too wide, too varied, and add too many complexities into it. So pilots are supposed to be a fairly simple way of proving a business case will roll out further and farther in the future. So, and what a lot of people do is they start to scope out their pilot, and then it just grows and grows and grows. And they include more variables, more data, more people, more departments. They try to involve the whole business, which is, it's great to get as many stakeholders in the pilot as possible. However, that's what we mean by boiling the ocean. So therefore, what happens is if you boil a kettle, it's a fairly easy thing to do. You try to boil an ocean, it's impossible. That's why a lot of pilots actually fail today.
Well, I think it's great. I've definitely seen that firsthand as well, trying to do everything at once and make sure they don't get left behind. It has the reverse effect. So fantastic. You mentioned before, and I mentioned as well, the EASE framework, EASE, if I'm doing that correctly, and that's got a lot to do with the framework for becoming AI readiness for an organization, which I think is so timely and very, very important at the moment in the events industry. I guess from your side, could you unpack that a little bit more? Maybe, I guess, what that involves and what each of those sort of four sections mean.
Yeah, so we try to kind of ease people into AI, and that's why it's called an ease framework. So we look at education, we look at adoption, then we look at security and scalability, and then we look at enrollment, and those are the parts of our ease framework. And when we start with education, we think, well, how many people? What's the readiness of an organisation, or what's the readiness of a department in an organisation? So, how well educated are they? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the right training? Do they have the right knowledge base? I mean, there are, as I said before, the number of apps and the number of different frameworks. So, what we do generally is we start to educate people. And for us, you can have a quick look online on iamsami or cigroup.co.uk, and you'll see that we've got some masterclasses there on how we roll out that education piece. And then what we'll do is we'll educate your whole business or maybe your leadership team, and then we'll bring that education to bear. And then in that education piece, we'll run that masterclass, as I mentioned. And then out that masterclass, what we'll do is we'll identify pilots. And those pilots will then be the next part of the framework, which is adoption. So when you start to adopt pilots, then those pilots then have a better understanding of how you're going to adopt AI across the wider business in the future. So you adopt a pilot, and then you roll that pilot out. And then once you understand how that pilot's going to become scalable, then you set up your secure environment. And that's very similar to the way EventsAir work. We're using, I think you use a lot of Microsoft Azure, which is a very, very safe environment. We're using Azure for some customers, especially if it's Copilot, or we're using AWS, which is secure S3 instances of how you can keep your data safe. So therefore, once we'll do is we'll then set up that secure environment. We'll then bring that data in, and we can then anonymize it or however you want to do that, depending on your security protocols. And then we can start to then create that environment where your AI applications sit, where your actual data sits, and all of your your brand, your tone of voice, all of these parts that you need to then roll out your your AI scalability in a secure manner. Then we'll put all that into that environment, and then we'll enroll your people into that environment, and then you can start to actually get to use AI hands-on in a safe, secure manner. So that's how we get those four parts of that ease framework to help our customers get on their journey.
Fantastic. I was going to say that secure step super important. That was another huge facet from our survey of people being unsure and a bit nervous about the security risks. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns and people who aren't familiar with it, which is again ties to your education point. I guess when you say the education of the AI literacy, you mentioned some masterclasses on your website. Is there other ways, I guess, other recommendations of what organizations could do to educate them? And I guess what does that look like? Is it sort of watching introduction videos? Is it getting their hands dirty? Is there anything you'd recommend for people out there that need to look at educating?
So our masterclass works on different levels, depending on your readiness or already as an organisation. So we'll do that quick assessment with you, and then it will then vary a little bit whether it's a leadership team or whether maybe it's a local marketing team. So from the point of view of the part of education that we do, so let's take a leadership team, for example. Will come in, assume that they've got quite a high level of AI knowledge, but then we would actually then work out which pilots they were going to run within that business. If we were maybe doing that for a marketing department or an events department, we would then bring in and we would then come in and we would actually bring the applications along. So we'd actually bring the tools along that they were going to use to maybe transform their proposals or transform the research they need to do to write a proposal for a client, or maybe look at the tools they need to make better logistics documents, or look at the tools they might need to, integrate kind of digital tools into inviting attendees or finding out where attendees were going to hotspot into an exhibition hall, for example. So what we would do is we would look at all the applications that would be suitable for that particular audience, and then we would effectively bring along those apps, and we would then do some demonstrations of how you could then enhance the way that your offer would work for your client. And then we would run those classes for you, and then we would teach you hands-on how to use those applications. We teach you how to prompt. We teach you how to set up projects. We would then teach you how to kind of ingest your own kind of tone of voice, but then we'd show you how to bring your own client's tone of voice, brand guidelines, all of these elements that you need for really, really good generative AI in the event space. We would then assimilate all those apps into you and train you on them, and then give you some proper tangible outputs that you can then take away, and then you can start interacting with those pilots with your clients and start running some of your own trials with clients directly. So that's the way that we would kind of like take the kind of education piece and in a masterclass for different levels of people in an organization, but we generally tailor them each time that we do them.
Right. Okay. Cool. And I was going to say, I really like this framework. I'm just working my way through it. I think on the adopt stuff, I think you mentioned before, don't try and boil the ocean. You're trying to do too many things at once. Instead, look at adopting POCs, proof of concepts, in different areas. What's the sort of process that you go through, or you recommend going through, when it comes to looking at these pilots? Is it sort of look at your entire sort of supply chain of your event, and you find the first biggest problem and see how you can fix it? How do you sort of identify where to do those POCs?
Well, what we wouldn't do is do an end-to-end process for an event as a pilot, because again, that will be like trying to boil an ocean. So what we do, we break the process down into its constituent parts. So let's do that quickly now. Let's do a very, very simple way of doing it. So let's actually say, well, before you put an event together, what you need to do is you need to put some research together. What's the location? Where is it going to be? How does it fit the audience? What the brand essence that you want within this event, or this experience? So we would then look at the research tools that would help you get all of that information together for your proposal. And then we would teach you how to prompt those research tools to then produce a really, really well thought through proposal that would actually meet the brand guidelines, that would actually be on brand, that would meet the brand guidelines, that would have all the right creative, all the right photography, all the right film. So we could then do small snippets of film for you within that proposal. And then we'd also say, right, okay, the other piece that you need is the data. So because you need to go off and research that you make sure that that audience actually want to come to that location at that time and receive that content. So therefore you need to understand what else is happening in that environment or close by. So we teach you how to research that. So now what we're doing is we're running a pilot to produce a proposal. Okay, and that proposal would then go to the point of saying, right, okay, so we'll produce that proposal like we all do now manually. We go off and we go off and do the spreadsheet separately. We go off and try and get the creative department to do the little mini film, or we go off and get them to put together all of that creative campaign to match it. So we would teach you which apps that you need and how to best prompt them to bring all that proposal together. We would also take some of your old proposals and we would start to teach that piece of AI. Bear in mind, it's a large language model. It can only learn if you teach it. So therefore, what we would do is we get it to ingest some of your great proposals that you've written for those other great clients. And we would then ask to compare that to the research, compare it to the proposal it's writing. And then it would produce you a really, really good quality proposal that, yes, it would need human refinement, but it will do most of that heavy lifting for you. We're calling it that, I think we all understand what Pareto's law is, 80% versus the 20. It will do 80% of that work for you. And then the human refinement will be another 20. And the amount of man hours it saves you in proposal writing to get from a very, very quick concept to a storyboard to a high level proposal, to share that back immediately with the customer, to then start your engagement process of refining it. So that's how we would do a pilot in the first part of the process. Then we would then break down another pilot to run on maybe producing your logistics documents or tracking your clients, or bringing all that data to bear. Once you've sent the invitation out, now you're getting all these inbound emails, all these inbound requirements. So we would have maybe beforehand, we would have ingested all that information, all those responses, all those answers, and we would have put them into a chatbot. So we would have taken all of the information about the hotel, about the location, about the travel, about the local area, and we would have ingested all of that into a simple chatbot, which then you could basically chat with it and ask it anything you wanted to. But the thing around that is it won't hallucinate. Okay, and that's a big problem with AI. It goes off and finds answers that aren't really there, because we would have put that into that secure environment. Then it can't go off and actually then look at other things and then skew its answers. So that's another pilot we would run about how to teach you how to actually set up an agent to answer all of the queries that the customers may email you, and it'll be an instant conversation they'll be able to have with them.
Fantastic.
So there's another instant pilot, and then those pilots go on and on. But what we don't do is try to do an end-to-end process, because that is boiling the ocean.
Absolutely.
And you've got to think about AI is the best way I describe it to some people is think about AI as the conveyor belt in the supermarket. Okay, and basically, how long is that conveyor belt? Because the amount of information it can hold in any one time is actually quite limited. So think about it as you put it on the one end of the conveyor belt, and basically it drops off the other end if you actually ask it too many questions that are too far away from the original answer. The conveyor belt only so long, so therefore it drops off, and it starts then asking itself some more questions because it's lost the original point of view, because there's too much data now that's been boiled and it can't hold it all on that conveyor belt.
Good.
So it's simple visualization of capabilities are today, but people think its capabilities are infinite, but it's not.
Yes.
Only as much as the CPU or the GPU can actually hold in its memory at that one time.
Absolutely. And also that, I'm really glad you touched on the relearning phase. I think that's going incredibly important. We can't just, it doesn't know everything about everything, even though it sometimes pretends to. You need to definitely feed it back in and relearn to have context on what you're doing as well. And you mentioned too about the secure, which is again, I think such an important part of it, and something, a lot of the event planners that we engage with, they're very nervous of, and they're very unsure. I guess for the secure side of things, you said you use sometimes Azure, that EventsAir is also based on. Is there, I guess, are there things you've seen people do or heard that when it comes to secure, that seems to happen a lot, that people are misunderstanding? So is it something that they're approaching the secure phase too cautiously or too risky? They're just letting things too open. I guess, what's a common thread when it comes to the secure part that people are sort of getting wrong, in your opinion?
Well, the challenge that we're having with the security aspect of things is there's so much what we call shadow IT out there at the minute. So there are, because organizations are trying to control AI. And unfortunately, it's a little bit like when we used to all get our own mobile phone and bring it to work, the BYO problem. So that problem's coming back, because not only have we got the device we bring to work now we're actually bringing the software to work. So now we're actually using ChatGPT, or we're using a Perplexity, or we're using HeyGen, or we're using Yellow Banana. I mean, the list is endless of the different apps that people are using. But the problem is they're using the free versions, and the free version is where all the risk is. So you start to upload data, onto a free version of any type of AI software, then that data you've just uploaded is actually then on the internet. And people then, unscrupulous people will be searching for that data you've uploaded. Although they all say it's very, very secure, believe me, some of that stuff does get out. However, if you go to the next level and you start to buy enterprise licenses, and then they actually get locked down from then if you go ahead and you buy an enterprise license, the enterprise license comes with an extra level of security, where there's a guarantee that your data isn't used to teach other large language models. And that is the point. The reason why they give you the software free is so they can learn from your data. And I assure you, although it might be anonymized, that data then is available for other people to learn from, and other people to get hold of, because you've uploaded it into a free model. And a lot of people don't realize what they're doing by uploading that information. I've watched databases being uploaded into free models, and also I can give you another instance where we were actually competing for a piece of business, and 3 agencies were pitching for it. And what happened is that we got down to the final 3 agencies, and the CEO basically rang me back and said, congratulations, you won the piece of business. I said, well, why was that? He basically said, well, your actually strategy was different to the other 2 agencies, and the other 2 agencies' strategy was identical. So we knew that they'd used a free version of Perplexity for them to come up with the same answer.
Wow.
So there is an instance for you where we've actually won over agency, because we were using a paid for model and they were using free ones.
Wow.
And I've seen instances where I've sat in boardrooms and I've delivered masterclasses to leadership teams, and I've explained to them, and you can watch tumbleweed go down the table saying, has anybody uploaded any data to one of the free apps? Has anybody uploaded the 5-year plan? Has anybody uploaded any of your and then literally there's silence in the boardroom for a moment when 1 or 2 of them have done it, but they don't realize what they're doing. However, these things are becoming now more, people are becoming more aware, and they're becoming more educated. But that's why the ease framework is so important. So we educated people up front to what the risks are around that security, and around around what you can do if you're not using proper paid for models. And that's why we've launched our kind of like new agency, and that's why we're launching our new piece of software, which is called I Am Sammy, which is a secure, scalable piece of AI, which works across all of those different apps. So the idea is we put what you call fintech across all of the best apps in the market. That fintech basically selects the best enterprise grade apps for you to get the best job done and the best results. So it will go to ChatGPT, it will go to Perplexity, it will go to HeyGen, it will go to whichever apps that we select or you want to select to put into that environment. They're all secure, and therefore you can use all those apps with one single login and one single license. So we're effectively providing that environment for people as we go forward, and our education helps people understand why that's so important.
Fantastic, great. I was going to say I've got so many more questions I've been writing down as we've been going, but I'll be cautious of time today. I think so just maybe to reiterate, the education adopts secure and enroll framework that's there for people who maybe who'd be listening who think this is great and they want to get involved and they're having some challenges that you've described of how do they get some education, the leadership team across it to get more involved with AI. Well, obviously, we'll definitely going to provide some information and links to a lot of your site and to I Am Sammy. But I guess even the step before that, last question would be, what would be your advice, or what would you recommend to listeners, event planners out there who want to start taking the AI a little bit more seriously, or what if you were in their shoes, what would be your next step if you were them?
Well, what I do is I try and get some. I mean, there are lots of courses out there. There are lots of. I mean, LinkedIn offer lots of great free courses. So what I would encourage you to do is look at go and have a look at our framework. We don't need to deliver that framework to you personally as an agency, but think about how you're going to educate yourself on the right apps to use for your application. And I think sometimes industries are waiting for the latest thing to be delivered to them. So, which is the single silver bullet that I need to go and get? Well, in this case, it's not going to happen. You need to be able to educate yourself on what's available, okay? And you need to put a good number of hours of reading in to understand what kind of business cases you're trying to solve. So think about the business problem you're trying to solve. That is where you start with AI. Once you understand the business problem that you're trying to solve, then you can understand the app that you need to accelerate the solving of that problem. And once you then understood that, you can then go and research that app. You can train yourself on that app properly, and then you can make sure that you can then run some pilots on that app through the through that adoption piece. Then you can make it secure, and then you can enroll your customers into using it or enroll your teams into using it. So just use that framework that we've created and go and do your own education, do a bit of your own adoption, understand how you've got to make it secure, and then understand how you're going to enroll, your teams are going to enroll, and how your clients are going to enroll.
Fantastic. That's a great way to end that there. That's super helpful. I guess, yeah, we'll make sure we include the links to Sammy and your website. But I guess for anyone here who's any sort of listeners got some more questions or would like to talk to you, David, yourself, is there a best way to reach you via LinkedIn? Is that probably the best?
You can reach me by LinkedIn, or you can come on to our I Am Sammy website and send my team a note, and they'll get back to you. And we offer some free reading. There's quite a lot of content on our website about education, about AI, and also about AI in the events industry. So go have a look at our website. There's quite a lot of stuff there already. Have a read of that, and once you have, then reach out, and if we can help, we'll certainly respond as quickly as we can.
Fantastic. All right, we might leave it there, David. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Really appreciate it, and I've definitely got a lot out of that. So hopefully everyone else has too. So thanks again for your time. Much appreciated.
Yeah, likewise, Alex, and thank you for taking the time to include us in your podcast. And I hope everybody's enjoyed listening to our chat today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, mate. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.